Very good evening to all. I, Dr. Shweta Raskina, Head of the Department of MSW at St. Aloysius College, extend a very warm welcome to each one of you. Defending human rights of vulnerable sections of our society has been extremely challenging today. Voice of dissent is silenced by constant threats and illegal arrest. Human rights activists who raise their voice fearlessly for the poor, tribal, and Dalits, upholding the Constitution of India, are themselves the victims of human rights violations today. We have heard of Stan Swami SJ, Sudha Bharadwaj, Varavara Rao, Hani Babu, and many others who are behind bars for raising their voice of dissent and working for vulnerable. In this context, Citizens Forum for Mangalore Development, Spandana Trust Jeppu Mangalore, and St. Aloysius College institutions, together with citizens of Mangalore, voice our dissent through this Zoom meet and a silent protest against the unlawful arrest of Stan Swami SJ and all human rights defenders. I welcome each one of you who have daringly joined us for this, and I'm sure our efforts will give justice to Stan Swami SJ and the great human rights activist. Before we proceed, we shall spend a minute in silence showing our solidarity with the great persons like Stan Swami, SJ, and the other human rights defenders and pray to God for the victory of truth. Dear friends, we have with us head of all St. Aloysius College institutions of Mangalore, Reverend Father Melvin Pinto SJ, our rector. He's a person who stands for justice, poor, and all democratic values. He will now give his introductory remarks. Over to you, Father.
Good evening, everybody. We have gathered here on this Zoom meeting under very challenging circumstances of our lives. We are aware that Father Stan Swami has been arrested in his place, his hometown, where he has been working for so many years relentlessly for the Adivasis. This man has stood for the marginalized all his Jesuit years. I've known him for quite a few years now. When I joined to be a Jesuit, I met him, that was way back in 1984. And just then, when I was just a novice then, I saw this, there was fire in his eyes. There was fire in his belly. He wanted to work for the poor, the marginalized. And nothing mattered to him. Justice was everything. To be a good Jesuit for him was to be just. And all this he wanted to do in a non-violent struggle for the poor people, in favor of the marginalized, the oppressed, the poor, the indigenous peoples. And that is why he chose to go to Jamshedpur and work there with these people in Jharkhand, fighting for their rights. We know that there is a strong mafia which is behind him. They want to destroy him. He has fought for the rights of the people. He was especially for their rights of land. We know that the tribal lands are very, very precious. Even when the land mafia is trying to take away their lands, he has stood by them. And for all the work that he has done, we know that he is facing a great opposition. And that is why this is a larger framework which we are seeing. It is not just Father Stan Swami who is being caught in all this. He has been he has been accused for having, you know, for the violence in Bhima Koregaon, which had taken place in 2018. We know very well that the violence was begun with some forces, right-wing forces, which were led by Sambhaji Bide, Milind Ekbote, and others. And yet those people are left scot-free. Nothing has happened to them. And then these intellectuals are somehow, you know, taken in, roped in, and many of them, like Sudha Bharadwaj, Varavara Rao, and Vernon Gonsalves, Arun Ferreira, and many others, have been now kept in jail for more than 2 years. And there are charges that are not yet framed, or whatever is framed is all flimsy. And now Father Stan Swami, at the age of 83, has been apprehended by them and jailed in Bombay. Now, this is unpardonable, and yet we sometimes we feel helpless. But if we keep on saying that we are helpless and we can do nothing, then nothing will happen. And that is why whatever support we show to everyone who is gathered all around this nation, there are people we know in different cities who are coming together to observe this Solidarity Day. And we are not the only ones here in Mangalore. There are those in Bangalore and Hyderabad, Chennai, and many other places who have gathered together, and we are going to support them. And so this is going to be a general support that we are giving to everyone, to tell the government that we do take note of what is happening and we do not approve of it. And that is why this protest. To tell you more about this, we have with us uh, Ms. Lara of Bombay, and advocate of Bombay High Court. And at the same time, we have Father Tony, with whom we are trying to make contact, because it has been, the connection has been a little bad. But then we are making contact with Father Tony, a Jesuit from Jamshedpur, who can give us greater details about this, to know what we are protesting against. I want you all to listen to them, and then we go out in a silent protest. Let it come from our hearts that it means a lot to us. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Rector. Dear friends, we all need to sign the online petition for release of Father Stan Swami. Link will be sent in the chat box. I request all the participants to please sign this online petition. We have arranged this Zoom meet in order to listen to the great activists who will give us a wider picture of on human rights violation, on social activists themselves, and what we need to do as responsible citizens of our society. Therefore, we have Father Tony PMSG from Jamshedpur Jesuit Province and Ms. Lara Jeswani, advocate of Bombay High Court. To tell us more about them, we have Ms. Vidya Dinkar, coordinator of Citizens Forum for Mangalore Development, a forum that has always been in the forefront of social action. Over to Vidya Dinkar.
Thank you, Shweta. It's not just I think all of us together have managed to keep some form of social action alive. And I think it's quite fitting that we come together when Father Stan and, of course, so many human rights defenders across India are facing the brunt of the present regime. Father Tony has just joined us, and I'd like him to say something, so we're sure you can hear us well and we can hear you, Father.
Yes, so
Oh,
I'm
great.
listening to you.
Perfect, perfect. So, Father Tony has been someone who has worked closely with Father Stan Swami. He's also a close friend of his. He, with a few others and Father Stan, constituted a research team that undertook a research study on under trial prisoners in Jharkhand, on the basis of which Father Stan filed a PIL in the Jharkhand High Court in 2017. Father Tony PM is, of course, a Jesuit priest from the Jamshedpur province of the Society of Jesus there in Jharkhand. He holds a PhD in political science from the University of Ghent in Belgium, which is one of the most beautiful towns. I recommend whoever can go to Ghent, then Father might help them go around, but it is a beautiful town to see. He's been working with the Adivasis of Jharkhand in West Singh district till 2018 in association with the Tribal Research and Training Center in Chaibasa. Presently, he is working with the National Domestic Works Welfare Trust. He's been the director of City and Railway Child Line in Ranchi for the last 2 years. And of course, as many of us do know, some of us being social work students here, a Child Line is a 24 hours emergency service for children in distress. And so he is also the director of a skill training center for young Adivasi women in Ranchi. We are so happy to have you with us, even though it is a challenging time. Father Tony, over to you to tell us what brought upon us this situation that an 83, 84-year-old Jesuit priest who has worked with Adivasis all his life in a totally non-violent and engaged way should be hauled away by the NIA, and also get us updated as to what is happening. The people of Mangalore want to know. We are very keen, and we will brave the odds of the rain outside to stand up for Father Stan. But meanwhile, if you could tell us from up close what has been happening and why.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for organizing this and giving me the opportunity to talk about Father Stan, who has been my hero all these years when I joined, from the time I joined the Society of Jesus. Father Stan has been arrested on 8th evening, 8th of this month. The NIA team came and they took him in their vehicle and they kept him in the regional office of NIA in Jharkhand, Ranchi. And on the following day, 9th morning, they took him to Mumbai, and now he is in Taloja jail in Mumbai. And the accusation is that he has links with Maoists. But actually, there is that's not the actual reason, I think, and he does not have any links with Maoists, as he has denied all these allegations made by the NIA. But along with others, like just now, Father Rector was telling many others, Sudha Bharadwaj, Somasen, Varavara Rao from Andhra Pradesh, Somasen from Nagpur. She is a professor at Nagpur University. Then Vernon Gonsalves, Gautam Naulaka, Surendra Gadgil, Hani Babu, Anand Teltumde, and Arun Ferrere, Sudhir Dhawale, and Mahesh Drought, Rona Wilson, Sai Baba, and finally Stan Swami. So 14 best committed activists in the country working in various parts of our country have been put in jail now. And Father Stan, of course, he is 83 years old and he is having Parkinson's sickness. He has been having for a long time. But despite all these, he has been working very hard, very focused on Adivasi rights recently. From 91 onwards, he has been working in Jharkhand among the Adivasis, and he Before coming to Jharkhand, he was in Karnataka in Indian Social Institute, Bangalore. And there from, I think, 1975 to 1990, he was there, and he was the director. And he used to give social analysis classes based on Marxian analytical tools to thousands of youngsters that time. That time it was emergency plus Sampurna Kranti, headed by J. Prakash Narayan and so on. So the young people, college going students, youth and so on, requested ISI, Indian Social Institute Bangalore, to give them tools for analyzing society. So that challenge was taken up by that time the then director of the institute, and later Stan Swamy and his friends conducted these courses for many years. So many people actually benefited from his and many of the committed activists and lawyers in our country are also students of Father Stan Swamy. So after serving many years, about 15 years in Bangalore, he came to Jharkhand, and before going to Bangalore itself, when during his regency time is a time when those who are studying to become a Jesuit do some kind of practical work, in some schools and so on. Like you must have seen brothers working in schools and colleges just to see whether the ministry that the Jesuits are doing fit them and they are capable of doing or so. So that period is called Regency. So Father Stan was in St. Xavier's High School, Lupungutu, that time. And that he was also prefect of the hostel for the boys there. And then on weekends he used to go, and during holidays he used to visit boys' homes. And then he also used to go to the local weekly market, which takes place on Tuesday, I think Tuesday every week in Chaibasa. And then from far away, Adivasi men and women, children all come to purchase various things from the market. That is called a Mangal Bazaar. Mangalwar is a Tuesday, and Bazaar is the bazaar there, like market, no? So they used to buy the necessary things. And then Stan used to observe, like Adivasis, they bring their produces from the villages, like forest produce and a small chicken to sell, and take some salt and what is not available in the village, salt and kerosene and so on. But the dalals and the merchants, like, they used to exploit them, and they used to take away their goats and whatever they bring from before the people arrive in the market itself, they used to catch hold of them and give them something and send them away, that kind of exploitation. So that time he says he could not do much, but then by staying and visiting Adivasi houses, he felt that, they have better cultural values, which is egalitarian and closer to nature they live, and they have a very democratic kind of setup in their villages, and they do not exploit anyone. They are very hardworking and honest people. So he fell in love with them, and he says that in one of his writings. So after coming back from Bangalore, he was very happy to be in Chaibasa, and then from Chaibasa he used to travel 140 kilometers on motorbike to meet other activists who are coming to the capital at that time. Capital, of course, the main city in Ranchi. Ranchi is the capital of Jharkhand now. So Ranchi used to be a meeting place for all the activists who are working for the rights of Adivasis in various districts of Jharkhand. So he used to come for that meeting, and then he slowly built up his network of activists and socially concerned persons, other persons. And then what he did was, what he has been doing was that he kept on being alert, himself. He was always alert on various ideologies and processes and policies of the government and the industrialists, etc., which would take away Adivasi land. Adivasi land is full of minerals, forest resources, and so on. Therefore, the government and other policies, their policies mostly focused on industrial development, which benefited only certain group of people, very few people who have huge capital. But the ordinary people, Adivasis especially, they were losing their land. They were displaced from their land, despite having many laws, constitutional provisions, the fifth schedule of the constitution, which says Adivasi land should not be handed over or sold to other people who do not belong to Adivasi communities, and their land should be protected. And there should be a tribes advisory committee, tribes advisory council in Adivasi states. This provision also in the constitution. So the government was not willing to implement, and tribes advisory council should only have Adivasis as its members. But recently, last government appointed a non-Adivasi as its president and so on. So all these violation of the provisions of the fifth schedule of the constitution, whenever it happens, it has been happening, but Father Swami has always been raising his voice against this. So the government also, the policymakers also had some disturbance, at least, like if everybody keeps quiet, then they can go on. But Stan always used to stand up and speak, oh, this is not happening, this is not implemented. Besides fifth schedule, there are also several other legal provisions to protect Adivasi rights, their traditional land and community resources, like Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act, Santal Pargana Act. All these are to protect their land and resources. If they lose their land and resources, their cultural values and their community will be destroyed. So we want Adivasi culture, which is so beautiful, to continue to be existing, and they also can make their contribution to our nation. So that way, besides that, there has been also, of course, this displacement and dispossession of Adivasi land came very, that process accelerated from towards the end of 1999, towards the end of 90s to beginning of 2000, with the implementation of the policies arising from neoliberal policies, arising from liberalization, globalization, and privatization, and so on. So the process of displacement and marginalization of Adivasis accelerated. So that time, many of the activists in Jharkhand, especially Jesuits who have been involved in protecting Adivasi rights, they felt that we should set up a center where all the activists from all the states, not states, but all the districts can come and discuss and deliberate, and they can work together in a network mode. So he set up a social action center in Ranchi, which is called Bagaicha, and he is the founder director of that one. He has been, so from 2006, the center was inaugurated. Its construction, the land, all these things were brought together by Stan's effort, and then he was the founder director, and he continued to be here. And he used to write every time when anything happens to Adivasi communities, and which also included like recent issues have been the government decided to put all the community so-called wasteland, which Adivasis used for grazing cattle and other purposes. All those land was put in the land bank to be easily given to industrialists. So he opposed that one. And then whenever Adivasi youth, they they stand up and question the companies who would take away their land, and the dalals and who exploit Adivasis and so on. When they challenge the market, the business community and so on, they used to accuse Adivasi youth as being associated with Naxalites. So that way, it seems about 3,000 Adivasi youth have been put in jail in different jails of Jharkhand. Also in Chhattisgarh, also the same thing is happening. Study to know whether these Adivasis and other backward caste community, so-called backward caste community youth who are in big number in jail, if actually are they really Naxalites? We wanted to know. So we did a survey from various districts. We met 101 such in jail for some time and then came out of jail on bail. And then we interviewed them and found out that 97% of them did not have any connection with Naxalites or the extremist groups. Therefore, what we did was, when the truth came out, through our studies, Stan said, we have the truth now, but we cannot keep quiet with this. We have to act on it. So he filed a PIL, public interest litigation, in Jharkhand High Court. And then that case was also there. That was also pressing. The High Court asked the then Chief Minister to produce, the government to produce the necessary details. We demanded that we need to have the details of all those who are accused in jails. So the High Court asked the government to do that, but the government never did it. 2 years they postponed, and they give on justifying and so on. That was another type of pressure we put on the government. And the other thing was, like the implementation of PESA Kanun, provisions of the Panchayat Raj extension to scheduled areas. Those provisions also were not implemented. So Stan also used to write about that one and challenge the government. Like this, whenever Adivasi rights have been violated, he used to speak out. And with regards to recent development, just before filing the PIL in the Supreme Court regarding the under trial prisoners, about more than 3,000 in jail, he appealed to many of the activists who are working in West Bengal, activists, lawyers, and academics. Also, he told them that we have done this survey and we have found these facts. So what are you people doing in other states like Chhattisgarh, Orissa, West Bengal, and so on? So he wrote to them and they all responded, and we had a meeting here. And during those meetings, Advocate Sudha Bharadwaj, who have been already working in Chhattisgarh for the rights of Adivasis and Dalits and laborers, she had come to Bagaicha in Ranchi, and Advocate Surendra Gadgil also had come, and along with them many other activists and committed persons had come. And they formed a committee called Persecuted Prisoners Solidarity Committee. And in that committee, many of these people were there, and based that committee, during those meetings, we decided to file the PIL. So now the accusation on Stan is that, he is having links with Maoists, which is not true. On the other hand, Stan was speaking out whenever the rights of Adivasi people have been violated, and that did not go well with the industrial groups and the political parties and all those who are in power, who want to take away their land and who do not want to implement the Adivasis' rights to promote their cultural values and their community resources. And that's the main reason all these committed, beautiful and learned persons, intellectuals, have been one by one taken in, and their voices have been silenced. And that's why
Father Tony, you
in
have
our country.
2
And
more minutes.
yes,
Hello?
I am concluding. Thank you
Yes,
very much.
thank
So
you
that's
so much.
why we are with Father Stan, and then today we have been having a hunger strike in Ranchi. And that's going on, and in many places, in many districts, people are protesting. And I think we need to work and come together and try to see how we can do whatever we can to get justice for these people. Thank you very much.
Thank
That's all I
you,
wanted to
Father.
say.
Thank
If
you so
anybody wants to,
much.
yes, if anyone wants to ask anything, I can
Yes,
answer their
if
questions.
anyone wants to ask anything, please put it in the chat box here, and Father will look at it together with us, and he will type in, and if we have time thereafter, we will get him to, speak. I'd like to introduce, oh my God, where did, I just got, you know, ah, so I'd like to introduce our next speaker, and after that we head to the streets. There's with us, we have Lara Jasani, who is an advocate, even though she might come off as a student, but she's actually an advocate in the Bombay High Court. And she's actually, I cannot call upon anyone better than her, because we have so many students, she can actually engage them to come out and act on behalf of all of us. She considers herself a student of law and politics, and she tries to pursue her interests in literature, philosophy, and music, and the study of human behavior and their relationship with the state and the environment. Lara Jasani has been practicing law in the Indian courts for over a decade now. And she is currently an independent litigator since September 2017, with her primary practice based out of the Bombay High Court and the National Green Tribunal. She holds a master's in political science, with her specialization being in Indian politics, and a master's in law with a specialization in criminal law. She takes up cases of human rights violations, in particular constitutional, environmental, development, and anti-corruption matters, also the death penalty, criminal cases, and generally in defense of all human rights defenders, which is why we asked Lara to come on board today. In particular, she represents project affected people and communities and civil society organizations in matters pertaining to environmental concerns and violations, pollution, disasters, bad infrastructure projects of the kind that Father Tony mentioned that he and Father Stan engage with, and of course displacement, which a lot of the Adivasis in Jharkhand and those areas are facing every day, and not just there, but across the country. She's also engaged in public policy and advocacy work on democratic rights and civil liberty issues, and in human rights and legal education. She's an ad hoc committee member of the Maharashtra unit of the PUCL, which is the People's Union for Civil Liberties, and is a national working committee member of People's Commission on Shrinking Democratic Spaces, PCSDS, which is what is, I mean, everything is just coming in close and tight and hardly allowing us to breathe. So she is part of the People's Commission on Shrinking Democratic Spaces, and also a part of Human Rights Defenders Alert. She's been part of and continues to work with several collective networks and groups, and collaborates with various CSOs across the country, including ours, and business and human rights initiatives and intersectional feminist collectives on an issue basis, which is why I said, none better than you, Lara, to take the mic. Welcome. You have to unmute yourself, Lara. You never actually need help with that. She is a strong firebrand fighter, but I think we have a problem with somebody who's been trying to keep Lara mute. Dina, would you please, there you are, Lara. Yes.
Thank you so much, Vidya. Very elaborate introduction. I would probably send you a smaller brief note. But thank you very much to the organizers for organizing this very important meeting, to the Citizens Forum for Mangalore Development, and the St. Aloysius College Institutions and the Spandana Trust. I must express my heartfelt gratitude that we have had this, this webinar organized and the protest that will follow at a very critical time. We all know that our country is going through a very difficult period, and we've had a spate of arrests that have taken place in the recent past, not only in the Bhima Koregaon case, but in several other cases like the Delhi violence case, different environmental movements that are taking place across the country, including in Gujarat at Kevadia or in Maharashtra. So we are seeing that there has been, an attempt to silence all democratic voices and dissenting voices in our country. And in an environment like this, it has become very difficult for us to get together in spaces where we feel safe and where we can talk about our democratic rights and the issues that concern the country. I'm very glad that Father Tony was here to talk about Father Stan's work. He has worked very closely with Father Stan, and we all have been very greatly inspired by the work that Father Stan has done in a very difficult environment in Jharkhand. Now, in places like Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, the main interest of the government has been to exploit the natural resources, corporatize them or commercialize them, and this has been at the cost of Adivasi rights. The Jal Jangal Zameen of the Adivasis has been usurped by the government and handed over to corporates, and these are not just land pockets that belong to them, that they have nurtured and that they have preserved for all these years, but they are ancestral lands that are land holdings of theirs. And in spite of their rights being recognized under the constitution, in spite of several laws being created, of course, according to many of us lawyers, insufficient, but in spite of them being created, they have been denied these rights using the most illegal and violent means. And it is people like Father Stan Swami, Sudha Bharadwaj, and several others who are working with Adivasis today, who are facing the brunt of having worked on a very critical issue in very remote areas to protect their rights or to provide justice to them when they are arrested by a brutal state. So if you want to understand the Bhima Koregaon case, and I'm going to mainly talk about the overall picture, Father Tony has spoken extensively, in particular about Father Stan's work, but we need to understand the conspiracy behind these kind of cases in order to know how we are related to them. Because many times what happens is someone gets arrested in a remote part of the country and we feel, hey, we are not under attack. Why should we come forward? Somebody else is under attack somewhere else. But how does this impact us? The truth over here is that all of us are connected through the nature, through the environment, through the various economic and political issues that we are all facing today. As minority people, we are being attacked. We have there has been a communal environment that has been created in the country. Many people who come from the marginalized, oppressed, and vulnerable sections, from the minority sections, have been made to feel like they do not have rights of citizenship or rights over this country, or that they do not have a right to speak freely or to protest or to demand anything of this government. And all of us, in that sense, all our rights are interconnected. What is happening in places like Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh might seem remote to us because it's geographically far away from us. But what is happening over there in many ways is also happening in our own states, in the remote areas of our states where forests are being diverted, where lands have been captured, where natural resources have been exploited for commercial use. Now, when we look at natural resources, what do we think of? Natural resources are all our resources. They are our country's resources. They are public resources. They are part of the environment. And they're part of what we leave behind for the future generations. As we are all talking about sustainable development today, we're talking about environment and sustainability, because we all are looking at how to conserve the nature to prevent these disasters, to address the issue of climate change. What the Adivasis have naturally and historically done is to conserve the environment, conserve the natural resources. And their fight today is actually to protect those natural resources from exploitation. And who are the people who are exploiting it? The ones who are being given, companies like Adani and big mining companies who are actually going to these areas in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh and exploiting these natural resources, are doing it for their private profit. Many of the biggest companies that we saw, whether it was Nirav Modi or Vijay Mallya or Sahara, there is a new series which has come out on Netflix just very recently on the big bad billionaires, which talks about all of these corporates and how they milked the people of public monies by starting these public limited companies. And then later on, they were in debt and they left the entire economy damaged. So all of these people have done this for their own private profit. And it is for the private profit that these forests are being diverted and these corporates are being allowed to come and mine there. It is activists like Sudha Bharadwaj, Stan Swamy, and Mahesh Raut, and many of these activists who are today arrested in the Bhima Koregaon case, who stepped in, who helped organize and mobilize the forces there, stood in democratic protest against the exploitation of the natural resources, stood hand in hand with the Adivasis who were brutalized by the state. Every time they would come out to protest, they were targeted, they were killed. Women have been raped in these areas. There have been mass rapes, mass murders. Youth have been arrested, put in jail. They have been disappeared. There have been custodial deaths. There have been brutal killings. And none of this reaches us because this is in very remote areas where there is a media blackout. It is very few people, few activists, few Jesuit priests like Father Stan Swami who took it up to them to go and fight for the rights of the most poor and marginalized sections who are neglected by society, but who are actually doing a service to all of us, to the country, by protecting our natural resources and our environment. And it is because of the work that they are done that they have been arrested. The Bhima Koregaon case actually results from, the case was filed using the excuse of a conference which was organized on 31st December 2017 called the Elgar Parishad. Following this conference on 1st January 2018, the Dalits in Maharashtra, they commemorate the 1st January. And 1st January 2018 was a 200-year commemoration of the Bhima Koregaon battle. And they commemorate this because it is a very important and significant day for them in order to fight caste oppression. The Dalits at that point of time in Bhima Koregaon were subject to an extremely casteist and oppressive rule by the Peshwai rulers. And when they stood in the British forces, and this is not a question of the freedom movement, they were not given a chance to be part of anything. They were outcast, they were thrown out of the villages, they were untouchables, they were raped, they were killed, they were treated like garbage. And when they got an opportunity to rise against this in a battle that took place in Bhima Koregaon, which they won, as a symbol against caste oppression, that day is celebrated, and people, Dalits from all over the state, go to Bhima Koregaon in order to commemorate this. It is on 1st January 2018 that a lot of Dalit visitors went to Bhima Koregaon. And they were attacked by RSS and youth and instigated by Eknath Bhide and Sambhaji Bhide by Bhide and Mohite. And they are right-wing, political leaders who instigated the youth over there to go and attack the Dalits. So actually the violence had taken place against Dalits. However, at that point of time, no reaction came from the government against this violence that had taken place for the Dalits. So the Dalits in the state called for a statewide band on the next day. They strike. They had a huge protest on 2nd January 2018. In this 2nd January 2018 protest, the Dalits who came out on the streets were arrested and detained under more than 200 FIRs that were filed against them. So while there was no action taken against them for the 1st January, the 2nd January, this happened. However, following this on 2nd January, there was huge outrage because Dalits had been very badly attacked. And at that point of time, an FIR was also filed against Bhide. And they were, and that was the first FIR that was filed in the Bhima Koregaon case. However, there was a lot of coverage that took place. The print media carried it. People said that they should be arrested because for attacking the Dalits. There was a huge wave of support that the Dalits got at that point of time. So in order to change this narrative and to protect those right-wing goons who had actually attacked upon the Dalits, burned their houses, burned the villages on the way to Bhima Koregaon, it is that this false case, that is this Bhima Koregaon conspiracy case, was actually lodged. And it was used as an excuse to go and raid activists who were working with Dalits and Adivasis, who are people like Sudhir Dhavale, Mahesh Rawat, Shoma Sen, Sudha Bharadwaj, Varavara Rao, Father Stan Swami, Hani Babu, and the Kabir Kala Manch, 3 activists who have now been arrested. So all of them, they actually raise their voice against caste atrocities. They fight for Dalit rights. They fight for Adivasi rights of the most marginalized. And they are the ones who were raided and have been slowly and steadily arrested. And in today's date, 16 such people have been arrested who are noted activists who have worked for the rights of the people. So one has to understand the background and history of how this case has been built. And today it is them. Today it would be tomorrow it would be anyone else fighting against injustice. Tomorrow, if something happens to our family, our friends, something happens in our society, there is injustice, there is violence, and we go out and we protest, or we go out and we demand justice, it could be any of us that are being, that will be targeted in this manner. So it's very important for us. We see what's happening around us. We see that the democratic, processes have been slowly subverted, that the independent institutions have been closed. I practice in the National Green Tribunal, which is known as the Environmental Court. There are 5 benches of the Environmental Court, that is the National Green Tribunal. 4 of these benches have been closed since 2017 when a financial amendment was brought in, controlling the appointments of the judicial members. And since then till now, you've barely just a couple of months back, there has been online starting of cases from the Western Bench, but all these benches were closed down. Before this, there were so many good environmental judgments that were coming from these courts. I would have to keep going to to Pune, which is about 3 hours away from where I live in Bombay, to go and appear in these cases at least once a week, where when you take up all the cases together as an environmental lawyer. But all of this was closed down. An entire forum was shut down so that Adivasis and farmers, agrarian rights activists, land rights activists, environmentalists could not get justice from the courts, could not report environmental violations and cases of environmental pollution. An entire forum was shut down. So this is the kind of situation that we are dealing with. I just want to say one thing. We have to understand we are in a very precarious situation. If you see, India was the 3rd highest in the world as far as killings of environmental defenders are concerned in 2019, as per the Global Witness Monitor report. These are not statistics that I have made. If we are such a big democracy, if we are such a great nation, why is it that we are killing our environmental defenders? And these are the ones which have been acknowledged. These Adivasis who have been killed, who have been arrested, they don't even come in those numbers because they're not even acknowledged as environmental defenders. So we are in a very difficult situation, which is why as students, as young people, Vidya was very, very kind to include me in that generation. I'm very happy to be in that generation, although I have practiced for a decade now and I consider myself quite old. But for our generation or for your generation, it is extremely important for us to conserve our resources, to conserve this environment, to protect our democracy, to stand up for our constitution. That does all that. And it is because of this that this is our cause, and we have to rise in protest. So I want to once again, I don't think we have a lot of time, and you all have to proceed for the protest, so I don't want to take a lot of time. There are many issues that we have to talk about, but I feel this discussion that we've had on Father Stan Swami, this discussion that we've had to stand up and save democracy, to save our constitution, I think is the most important of them all. I'm sure we'll get a lot of occasions to now converse and share as much as we can. But we must realize that if we do not stand together, if we do not stand united, if we don't get out of our silos and get out of our bubbles and come out and fight, we are not going to win this battle against this government, which is not only authoritarian but is fascist and is out there to destroy all the democratic and constitutional values that we stand for, and that all these years defenders as well as various leaders from the beginning till now have stood for. Father Stan Swami is being called a Maoist, while actually he is the biggest believer in non-violent democratic protest. He is the believer in the constitution, he's a believer in democracy, and he's a believer of justice. And today he's being prosecuted and he's being vilified. So what is actually happening is he's being labeled a Maoist so that people don't come and support him. What they don't realize is we all know Father Stan Swami, and we all know that this kind of labeling and vilification is not going to work, because we have seen his work ourselves. We have been inspired by it, and we follow his path, and no matter what, we will stand by him. So I just hope that we can, move ahead with that spirit. And I'm very happy that you all have joined us, and I'm very happy to join you all. And if there is anything, I'm right here. So thank you very much, Vidya, and thank you all of you all for organizing this.
Thank you, Lara, for being the advocate you are. You really told us what we should do and how, and that's why we are ready to go outside and stand strongly in solidarity with Stan. Thank you, Father Tony, for giving us the granular picture of what Father Stan was in his everyday life and all his concerns. And thank you, Lara, for really pumping us to go out there and stand up for democracy and the constitutional values that we hold dear, whatever the government thinks. Father Praveen Martis, would you like to thank our two wonderful speakers and inspirers?
Here for wonderfully introducing our speakers for the day. We had a very good discussion this afternoon. Our dear friend Father Tony very well brought out the whole aspect of Father Stanley's life, and we all came to know everything about Father Stanley and how we stood for Adivasi rights. And that's the reason today, unfortunately, he's been victimized, he's been accused. So we all feel saddened, and we being Jesuits, we feel truly saddened. And thank you for all the others for joining us in this movement of solidarity. We need to stand with the people who defend the human rights and the justice at this moment. I'm extremely glad that Father Tony, my good friend, had beautifully explained to us about Father Stan's life and the protest that he made, and he had to suffer for it. Thank you very much, Father Tony.
Thank you.
I would like to also thank Lara Jasani, the advocate of Mumbai High Court. You have beautifully brought out the whole aspect of Bhima Koregaon case. Not only about that, but the whole aspect at this moment, how people have been victimized, how neo-corporatization has taken place, and how things have changed at this moment. And things are not being good. Things are going worse day after day. And these are very much informative aspects that you brought out beautifully and kindled that fire within all of us. We are now getting ahead, getting straight to the road. And before that, you truly enlightened our minds and hearts. I would like to especially thank you, Ms. Lara Jasani, for that beautiful discussion and bringing out all the aspects that are necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Father. Thank you.
I would like to also thank Ms. Vidya Dinkar, the Citizen Forum for Mangalore Development, Mangalore, and Spandana Trust, Jeppu, Mangalore, for joining us this evening for this wonderful discussion on demanding justice. All of us in Mangalore are joining, and I'm sure others from all over the country are joining today in solidarity to support Father Stan and others who truly stood for Adivasis and the marginalized section. We all are there. I'm sure all of us together can make a big difference. I would like to thank all the participants for joining us this evening on this discussion and supporting our movement. Thank you. God bless us all.
Thank you all. See you there on the street.
Yes, we would like to see you all on the streets. We are just heading directly now onto the streets. Please join us. Thank you. God bless you all.